Well, thank you so much for having me again this year. I see that there are some repeaters here, so that bodes well. I'm going to start off tonight, as I did last year, by talking a little bit about my relationship to poetry. I grew up in Ireland. I started my journey well over 80 years ago, and Ireland, as you know, is a poetry of singers and bards and poets, and so poetry was part of the growing up. You got it in school, and you know, the first poem I remember was that poem that I recited last year. I had a little pony whose name was Dappled Grey, blah blah. It doesn't bear repeating tonight, but oh, what the hell. I had a little pony, his name was Dappled Grey. I lent him to a lady to ride a mile away. She whipped him and she lashed him, she rode him in the mire. I'd never lend my pony now for all that lady's hire. Now when I said it, my accent was just a wee bit broader, you know, because I grew up in Belfast and we had that flat north of Irish accent with those upturns at the end of words, you know. I do have another poem, however, from my childhood, which I hadn't even thought of last year, and I came across it in a book just the other day, and it came back to me as though it were yesterday. It's a poem about the fairies, and it's by a man called William Allingham, who in the mid-19th century lived in County Donegal in Northern Ireland. And you know, fairies are very much a part of Irish lore, and they're both beloved and feared. And there's something of that in this poem, the fairies. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. Wee folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and white owl's feather. Down along the rocky shore some make their home. They live on crispy pancakes of yellow tide foam. Some in the reeds of the black mountain lake, with frogs for their watchdogs, all night awake. High on the hilltop the old king sits. He's now so old and grey, he's nigh lost his wits. With a bridge of white mist Columkill he crosses on his stately journey from Slieve League to Ross's. Or going up with music on cold starry nights to sup with the queen of the gay northern lights. They stole little Bridget for 7 years long. When she came down again, her friends were all gone. They took her back lightly between the night and morrow. They thought she was asleep, but she was dead with sorrow. They've kept her ever since deep within the lake, on a bed of flag leaves, watching till she wake. By the craggy hillside, through the mosses bare, they've planted thorn trees for pleasure here and there. Is any man so daring as dig them up in spite? He shall find the sharpest thorns in his bed at night. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. Wee folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and white owl's feather. And of course, growing up in Ireland as a Protestant and the son of a minister, the poetry of the Bible was very much a part of our growing up. This is something of the 139th Psalm. O Lord, you have searched me out and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. Where can I go from your Spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you're there. If I make the grave my bed, you're there also. If I take the wings of the morning and fly to the uttermost bounds of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me turn to night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness and light to you are both alike. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know it well. That is a poem which has stuck with me throughout my life, and which in this last years has been a life in which I realize how all of life is just infused with the sacred. Here's another poem from early days. This one's by Rudyard Kipling, and it comes at the end of that wonderful story in his child's stories book, the Just So stories, called The Elephant's Child. And it's about this curious little elephant in the days when elephants did not have trunks, who just asked question after question and after question. He was full of satiable curiosity, says Kipling, and he asks questions, and he gets spanked because he asks questions. And he goes down to the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and that phrase keeps coming up all through the story. And he asks that question of the crocodile, and the crocodile grabs him by his nose, and the crocodile pulls, and the satiable elephant child pulls, and eventually he no longer has a nose, he has a very handy trunk, and he doesn't get spanked anymore. And then the story ends with this wonderful and wise little poem. I keep 6 honest serving men. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. I send them over land and sea, I send them east and west, but after they've worked for me, I give them all a rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I'm busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch and tea, for they're hungry men. But different folk have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs from the second she opens her eyes. 1 million hows, 2 million wheres, and 7 million whys. And you know, poetry to me then was, you know, words that had a meter and a rhyme. Da 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 da. I don't know the rest of it, you know. It had that meter, a pulse going through it, and a rhyme. And that's what made something. That's what made something poetry. We're going to get on to a different kind of poetry. I'm going to read one more poem from my youth, and some of you may be familiar with this one. This one is by Edward Lear, who in the late 19th century was a sort of a man of letters and wrote a lot of beautiful literary silliness. Also an Irishman. The Owl and the Pussycat. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a fine pound note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar, "Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, you are, you are. What a beautiful pussy you are." Pussy said to the owl, "You elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married. Too long we have tarried. But what shall we do for a ring?" They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows, and there in a wood a piggy-wig stood, with a ring at the end of his nose, his nose, with a ring at the end of his nose. "Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring?" Said Piggy, "I will." So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. They dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon, and hand in hand on the edge of the sand they danced by the light of the moon, the moon, the moon. They danced by the light of the moon. Now, we're going to have some poems that, in fact, I don't think any of the rest of the poems, though they may have some of them, rhyme and meter, I don't think they depend on it. They don't depend on rhyme and rhythm and literary cleverness, but somehow they manage to get to the meat and the marrow of what it is to be awake and engaged in the business of living to the full. So, a poem each from 4 poets of our own day who speak deeply to the heart of those of us who are striving to live mindfully. Everything. I want to make poems that say right out, plainly, what I mean. And don't go looking for the laces of elaboration, puffed sleeves. I want to keep close and use often words like heavy, heart, joy, soon, and to cherish the question mark and her bold sister, the dash. I want to write with quiet hands. I want to write while crossing the fields that are fresh with daisies and everlasting, and the ordinary grass. I want to make poems while thinking of the bread of heaven and the cup of astonishment. Let them be songs in which nothing is neglected, not a hope, not a promise. I want to make poems that look into the earth and the heavens and see the unseeable. I want them to honor both the heart of faith and the light of the world. The gladness that says, without words, everything. That's a poem by Mary Oliver. We'll have more from Mary Oliver later. This one is from an award-winning poet I just discovered recently, one of the people who came for the interview that people have with me who want to do my life song. My life song program brought this poem with her, and somehow or other we got talking about poetry, and she said, I have this wonderful poem in my bag, and it's by Jane Hirshfield. Now, Mary Oliver is a woman of close to my own age. I think she was born in 1935. Jane Hirshfield was born, I think, in 1953, an American woman, and she was the first woman ever to graduate from Princeton University. It's hard. I don't think most of you remember a time when at certain Ivy League universities, women just couldn't go. So Jane Hirshfield, the first woman graduate of Princeton University, writes this poem, Rebus. Now, a rebus is, one of those puzzles where there's a picture or a configuration of words on a page that somehow or other suggest a well-known phrase or a word. Like you see stand, S-T-A-N-D, written on a page, and underneath it, I. What does it say to you? I understand. That's the kind of puzzle a rebus is. Here's her poem that she calls Rebus. You work with what you are given. The red clay of grief, the black clay of stubbornness going on after, clay that tastes of care or carelessness, clay that smells of the bottoms of rivers or dust. Each thought is a life you have lived or failed to live. Each word is a dish you've eaten or left on the table. There are honeys so bitter no one would willingly choose to take them. The clay takes them. Honey of weariness, honey of vanity, honey of cruelty, fear. This rebus, slip and stubbornness, bottom of river, my own consumed life, when will I learn to read it plainly, slowly, uncolored by hope or desire? Not to understand it, only to see. Only to see. As water given sugar sweetens, given salt grows salty, we become our choices. Each yes, each no continues. This one a ladder, that one an anvil or a cup. The ladder leans into its darkness. The anvil leads into its silence. The cup sits empty. How can I enter this question the clay has asked? The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage, you stand in the center of your room, house, half-acre, square mile, island, country, knowing at last how you got there, and say, I own this, is the same moment when the trees unloose their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliffs fissure and collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave, and you can't breathe. No, they whisper, you own nothing. You were a visitor time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming. We never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way around. That's by the Canadian novelist and poet Margaret Atwood. And one from David White. Mamine, be infinitesimal under that sky, a creature even the sailing hawk misses, a wraith among the rocks where the mist parts slowly. Recall the way mere mortals are overwhelmed by circumstance, how great reputations dissolve with infirmity, and how you, in particular, stand a hair's breadth from losing everyone you hold dear. Then look back down the path to the north, the way you came, as if seeing your entire past, and then south over the hazy blue coast, as if present to a broad future. Remember the way you are all possibilities you can see, and how you live best as an appreciator of horizons, whether you reach them or not. Admit that once you've got up from your chair and opened the door, once you've walked out into the clean air toward that edge and taken the path up high beyond the ordinary, you've become the privileged and the pilgrim, the one who will tell the story, and the one who, coming back from the mountain, who helped to make it. So when you're invited to do a poetry reading, you know, one of the things that that you begin to think about is, you know, how do I organize this? And you know, you could organize it by historical period, by genre, by theme, and you know, you can get very, very academic about the way you go about it. And you know, my poetry really doesn't come from academe. had my childhood poems, which keep coming back to me. I do more and more of these poetry readings. I took English 101 years and years and years and years and years ago. The main thing I remember about English 101 was reading Richard Hooker's Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity, which were much more interesting to me in my 20s, as I had just become an Anglican at that time, and he was one of the great early Anglican divines. I don't remember any poetry from that time. So my acquaintance with poetry really is at least the poems that I like to read, and the poems that now speak to me. It's much more recent. It's within the last, maybe the last 10 years, 10, 15 years or so, and but there is some value just in poetry itself because of the flashes it brings to you. I was sitting just the other day on the veranda of the lodge at the Hollyhock Institute on Cortes Island in British Columbia, a wonderful place where you must visit sometime. And it was an overcast day, but there were some holes in the clouds here and there, and I was looking across the bay at an island, 2 or 3 kilometers offshore, and I kept seeing these flashes of light, and they were brilliant flashes of light, and I thought, there's no lighthouse there. When they disappeared, I couldn't see a white mark on the shore or anything like that. But then every so often it'd be another brilliant flash of light, and they were kind of erratic. Sometimes it'd be one every 2 or 3 seconds, and then none for a minute or so, and then I realized over there it was a hole in the clouds, and a sunbeam coming through and catching the windshield of a little boat, a little launch, tethered to the shore. And I thought, poems are like that. The poems that I like to read are like that. They have these flashes of joy, these flashes of encouragement, of wonder, of insight, of understanding. Even though a poem can be meaningful, even though it's not fully understood. And you can take that from a genuine poet, T.S. Eliot. He says, genuine poetry can communicate before it's understood. So I don't even claim to get all the nuances of all the poems that I read, but I just love them for those flashes. So for the rest of the evening, I'm going to give you poems with lots of flashes in them. So let's get back to Mary Oliver. What is there beyond knowing? What is there beyond knowing that keeps calling to me? I can't turn in any direction, but it's there. I don't mean the leaves grip and shine, or even the thrush's silk song, but the far-off fires, for example, of the stars, heaven's slowly turning theatre of light, or the wind playful with its breath, or time that's always rushing forward, or standing still, in the same, moment. What I know I could put in a pack as if it were bread and cheese, and carry it on one shoulder. Important and honourable, but so small, while everything else continues unexplained and unexplainable. How wonderful it is to follow a thought quietly to its logical end. I've done this a few times, but mostly I just stand in the dark field in the middle of the world, breathing in and out. Life so far doesn't have any other name but breath and light, wind and rain. If there's a temple, I haven't found it yet. I simply go on drifting in the heaven of the grass and the weeds. If there's a temple, I haven't found it yet. I simply go on drifting in the heaven of the grass and the weeds. This is one, especially for a Sangha, mindful. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for. To look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. O good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. And now some poems from Rilke. This is a poem that I have been using for several years to frame the potential of my 8-week intensive voice work program, Life Song. Ich glaube an alles noch nie Gesagte. I believe in all that has never yet been spoken. I want to free what waits within me, so that what no one has dared to wish for may for once spring clear without my contriving. If this is arrogant, God forgive me, but this is what I need to say. May what I do flow from me like a river. No forcing, no holding back, the way it is with children. Then, in these swelling and ebbing currents, these deepening tides, moving out, returning, I will sing you as no one ever has, streaming through widening channels into the open sea. I want to free what waits within me. What waits within me. In all of us, something waits within. I want to free what waits within me, so that what no one has dared to wish for may for once spring clear without my contriving. May what I do flow from me like a river. Du Dunkelheit, aus der ich stamme, you darkness of whom I am born, I love you more than the flame that limits the world to the circle it illumines and excludes all the rest. But the dark embraces everything, shapes and shadows, creatures and me, people, nations, just as they are. It lets me imagine a great presence stirring beside me. I believe in the night. And then another poem about darkness. This one's by David Whyte. David is a contemporary poet living in the United States. He was born and grew up in North England. English father, Irish mother. He has written a number of books and is very actively engaged in helping bring soul back into corporations, working with senior executives with poetry. Wonderful flashes in white. Sweet darkness. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you're not beyond love. The dark will be your womb tonight. The night will give you a horizon farther than you can see. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Start close in. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way of starting the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To find another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes a private ear listening to another. Start right now. Take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing. Close in. The step you don't want to take. When I was reading that, it made me think of, the work that I do with the voice, particularly in Life Song, but even in Come Sing, the monthly singing drop-in, where people are inhibited from taking the first step in singing because they really want to be doing the second and third step or have taken the ultimate step. And, you can only start with where you are. You need to find the courage to take that first step. It's a good poem. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing. Close in. The step you don't want to take. All this group of poems, they're all by David Whyte. What to remember when waking. In that first, hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other, more secret, movable, and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there's a small opening into the new day, which closes the moment you begin your plans. There's a small opening into the new day, which closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. To be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To remember the other world in this world is to live your true inheritance. You're not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not an accident amidst other accidents. You were invited from another and greater night than the one from which you have just emerged. Now, looking through the slanting light of the morning window toward the mountain presence of everything that can be, what urgency calls you to your one love? What shape waits in the seed of you to grow and spread its branches against a future sky? Is it waiting in the fertile sea, in the trees, beyond the house? In the life you can imagine for yourself? in the open and lovely white page on the waiting desk. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. This is a poem of David Whyte that I just came across the other day. It's a tough poem. It doesn't interest me if there's one God or many gods. It doesn't interest me if there's one God or many gods. I want to know if you belong or feel abandoned, if you can know despair or see it in others. I want to know if you are prepared to live in the world with its harsh need to change you. If you can look back with firm eyes saying, "This is where I stand." I want to know if you know how to melt into that fierce heat of living, falling toward the center of your longing. I want to know if you are willing to live day by day with the consequence of love and the bitter, unwanted passion of your sure defeat. I've heard in that fierce embrace, even the gods speak of God. And now I think for the greatest source of flashes of light in the mystical, in the world of mystical poetry, the 13th century Sufi mystic Rumi. And I'm just going to be reading short poems of Rumi. These are ruba'is, short quatrains, and they're rich. A person who's sober is like a horse that's worth less than its saddle. It doesn't matter if you're all dressed up in gold. If you haven't been to the tavern, you can't yet be considered a man, because the smell of wine is at the bottom of every true religion.
Is that what it is?
If you let God hunt you, you'll be free of all your sorrows. But if you chase after your desires, you'll stay a slave to yourself. Know this very well. Your sense of self is an obstacle on your way. You'll keep getting beat up if you just hang around with yourself. If you let God hunt you, you'll be free of all your sorrows. But if you chase after your desires, you'll stay a slave to yourself. Know this very well. Your sense of self is an obstacle on your way. You'll keep getting beat up if you just hang around with yourself. Not until the mosques and minarets come tumbling down will real peace enter into our lives. Not before faith becomes heresy, and heresy becomes faith, will any man of God become truly Muslim. If even a tiny piece of yourself remains in your existence, you're still worshipping idols. But if you break free of all doubt and suspicion only with the acts of reason, then you create a new false idol called self-confidence. If you break free of all doubt and suspicion only with the acts of reason, then you create a new false idol, self-confidence. There's a place beyond good and bad deeds both, but this is not the place for every young and petty novice. The price for the one who wants to get there is to give his life and sacrifice his heart. There is a place beyond good and bad deeds both, but this is not the place for every young and petty novice. The price for the one who wants to get there is to give his life and sacrifice his heart. I'm in love with love, and love is in love with me. Body is in love with soul, and soul is in love with body. Sometimes I encircle love's neck with my arms. Sometimes love, like a heart-stopping beauty, throws his arms around me. There's a soul deep inside your soul. Search for that soul. There's a jewel in the mountain of your flesh. Go and find the mine of that jewel. O wandering Sufi, search if you can, but not somewhere outside. Look for it inside yourself. There's a soul deep inside your soul. Search for that soul. And here is a quatrain that is just full of encouragement for all of us who, after years of attempting spiritual pathways, still finds ourselves beginners. Come again. Come again. Whoever you are, come again. Even if you're an infidel or if you worship fire or idols, come again. Ours is not a pathway of despair. Even if you've broken your promise 100 times over, still come again. You can't get a taste of ecstasy so long as you stay sober. You can't know the soul so long as you think you are only your body. You'll never reach the truth if you don't give up yourself. When your heart is cleansed of everything you think you are, you'll see yourself as an old beloved soul. It's not possible to see your face without a mirror, so gaze at the beloved. Let his face become your mirror. Don't go anywhere but to gatherings of lovers and drunks. Don't get involved with normal people. Everyone pulls you to their side, the raven to ruin, the parrot to sweetness. Don't go anywhere but to gatherings of lovers and drunks.
We qualify. That's true.
And this is not one of the quatrains. But it's very true. One, one, one. The lamps are different, but the light is the same. So many garish lamps in the dying brain's lamp shop. Forget about them. Concentrate on essence. Concentrate on light. In lucid bliss, calmly smoking off its own holy fire, the light streams to you from all things, all people, all possible permutations of good, evil, thought, passion. The lamps are different, but the light is the same. One matter, one energy, one light mind, endlessly emanating all things. One turning and burning diamond, one. Ground yourself, strip yourself down to blind, loving silence. Stay there until you see you are gazing at the light with its own ageless eyes. I've somehow or other, in spite of myself, got to be rather old. And I came across this idealized picture of old age just the other day. This is by D.H. Lawrence. Beautiful old age. Beautiful old age. It ought to be lovely to be old, to be full of the peace that comes of experience and wrinkled, ripe fulfillment. Wrinkled, ripe fulfillment, you know. It ought to be lovely to be old, to be full of the peace that comes out of experience and wrinkled, ripe fulfillment. The wrinkled smile of completeness that follows a life lived undaunted and unsoured with accepted lies. If people lived without accepting lies, they would ripen like apples and be scented like pippins in their old age. Soothing old people should be, like apples when one is tired of love. Fragrant like yellowing leaves and dim with the soft stillness and satisfaction of autumn. And a girl should say, "It must be wonderful to live and grow old. Look at my mother, how rich and still she is." And a young man should think, "By Jove, my father has faced all weathers, but it's been a life." This from the standpoint of someone who's got to be pretty long in the tooth, this seems a little more to the point. When death comes, and this is Mary Oliver again, when death comes, When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering what it's going to be like, that cottage of darkness. And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement, the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. And one more to end. A blessing. This is Benacht by the Irish poet John O'Donoghue. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the grey window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colours, indigo, red, green and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life.